So on behalf of Savvy Ladies, welcome to everybody that is joining us. Also wanted to mention that if you have a question regarding your personal finances, you can feel free to reach out to our helpline. I will put that link in the chat. But without further ado, I'm going to send this over. Well, actually, I'm going to change the slides and tell you a little bit about our volunteers that are helping out today. We have our presenters, which are Lauren Flood and Julia Lilly. They're going to be presenting for us. And then womaning the chat, we have Wahida Aziz and Casey Gordon. We're going to answer your questions as they come up. So please don't be shy. Put those questions in the chat. We'll also have some time at the end of the presentation to do some Q&A, if you live Q&A. And then if you want to be on camera, please feel free. We'd like to see your beautiful faces. But just remember to keep your microphone muted so that everybody can hear. This is a this isn't a webinar format. This is a meeting format in Zoom. So again, thank you all for joining. I'm going to turn this over to Lauren.
Hello, everybody. I'm so glad that you could be a part of this budgeting for the holidays presentation. Before we kind of dive in, we do have a chat box and it is being monitored. If you have any questions, feel free to write, but also if you have any good suggestions that you have experience that has worked for you that you want to share with the group, I think it would be better if this was kind of a collaborative meeting. So, okay, very good. Okay, so when you're preparing for the holiday season, first of all, it's worth noting that as of today, there are 67 days to Christmas, if that's the holiday you're planning for. And so, you know, that's kind of a loaded thing. You're like, wow, 67 days to Christmas. So break it into baby steps. So the very first thing that we recommend is deciding how much that you can spend this season. So, you know, we have 67 days. You should have an idea of how much you get paid per week, per month, whatever it is. And you probably know if you have any bonuses coming due towards the end of the year or any other income. So, you know, figure out how much you have and then you can kind of figure out how much you can spend. So, you know, when we think of holiday spending, you know, we kind of like, okay, well, I can spend X amount of money this year. Perhaps it's $1,000. Okay, so if you realize that you can spend that much money, now you kind of need to divvy it up into pieces. And so the best way to do that is just to think about the different spending categories, or you can think of them even as buckets. So we've got, you know, gifts, of course, but there's a lot of expenses that maybe sometimes aren't thought about in the planning process, but they're there. So that could include travel, that could include holiday parties. Perhaps you need new decorations or you want to spruce up your decorations. And then you've got the miscellaneous expenses too, such as, you know, you've got the ugly Christmas sweater contest, or perhaps you're a family that likes to have matching PJs and then you get your family photos. So all of that adds up. And so being mindful of that now, thinking about it in advance can kind of help you allocate. So.
So you're exactly right, Lauren, on kind of laying out a game plan, because all these different buckets can add up and they add up pretty quickly. Based on this research, it's saying that consumers plan to spend about $1,000 on items. Now, whether your budget is $1,000 or $250, we see that about 65% of your budget is going to gifts and coworkers, and just being mindful of how much you want to make sure is in that bucket. And then you have those kind of non-gift items, such as food or decorations, like Lauren just highlighted. And then the miscellaneous. That's really what we're trying to kind of think through. I think budget is such a loaded word. It's more of like a plan. And so putting together that spending plan that can help you know in advance what those different expenses might be, so that you feel prepared headed into the holiday season and excited for each of the different milestone events, rather than feeling more overwhelmed by the cost associated with different engagements or obligations from a gift standpoint. Next slide.
Costs. So, we touched on this on the first slide. It definitely needs to be factored into your budget or your spending plan rather. And they can really break a spending plan. At the bottom, it says average vacation costs are about $11.50 per person per week. That's a huge expense. So, when we travel, we're not always staying at hotels the whole time, right? We're staying with family. But something I think that we should probably rethink is sometimes your presence is enough. So if you're going to visit family, do you really need gifts? Perhaps maybe setting that expectation in advance so that maybe there's no disappointment, but there's also, no guilt either. But if you are going to travel, some things to keep in mind is booking as early as possible. Flights are very expensive right now. Checking it daily, even because certain days of the week you kind of get better, lower rates, lower fares. And, if you can have that buffer window, usually on the site, the website that you're searching on, with that flexibility, you can usually find cheaper flights that way too.
Lauren, on that note, there's a website called kayak.com. I'm not sure if people are familiar with, that shows you the price based on different days that you're exploring to travel, just as another resource.
And so if you're going to drive, finding the cheapest gas. So AAA, even I think there's one called Gas Buddy, My Gas Buddy, something like that is an app. And then, being kind of resourceful, using points from credit cards to book your holiday travel if that's possible.
And then this is another one that Lauren highlighted before, is really kind of trying to be proactive of planning out from now 67 days, but anytime during the year, thinking through those expenses on what you might be earning over the next week, month, whatever the cadence is, so that you understand what your budget is, so that you're properly prepared for those expenses when they come. And then the other piece being pace yourself. Buying on kind of a weekly basis so that you can check different things off of your list, rather than waiting until the week before, when then the expenses just really feel more overwhelming.
Julia, one other thing about starting early, we're 67 days out today, but come January, you'll have 12 months. So Christmas comes every year. And so it would be great practice if you could kind of get in a habit of saving, a little bit every month towards that holiday spending goal. And there's ways to do that too. There's an app that I like. It's called Capital, and you can create savings buckets. And you can do things like round up your expenses or set a set amount to transfer. And what I really love about it from a behavioral perspective is you can even put your own photo of whatever Christmas means to you, or holiday, or any other goal. And so people tend to be a little bit more motivated when it's not just a stock image, it's something that means something to them.
This one's key. Again, Lauren and I are hammering home this kind of organization to give you that peace of mind, to give you the ability to enjoy the holidays rather than stressed. And so this is that preparation in advance of who are you planning for, on kind of making that list so that you're less prone to the impulse purchases when it comes time to celebrating the holidays. What is kind of thinking through how much you might either spend on someone or make for someone, thinking about them in different categories. where condensing your shopping to as few kind of locations as possible. One is really efficient from a time standpoint for you because time is a very precious resource as well, but then it also just simplifies those expenses. And then again, cost, just trying to set yourself up to avoid those impulse purchases that are made when it's the night before an event versus thinking through 2 to 3 weeks in advance. Now, don't get me wrong. I can preach this all day long, but we've all found ourselves there of scrambling to Amazon and like needing the 2 day shipping, but really trying to be more thoughtful as you think through your spending plan for the holiday season so that you don't find yourself in those situations as much.
Invisible Hand is a really great resource. It's a web browser extension that you can add. And so when you're shopping for whatever it is you're shopping for, it'll show you, if you're on Amazon, for example, it'll show you if there's a lower price elsewhere, say on Walmart or somewhere else. And so, ensuring that you're getting the lowest price is helpful.
And that's where, Lauren, using something like an invisible hand, giving yourself a little more time can be really, really impactful because then it doesn't matter if it ships in 2 days or a week, but you've gotten the best price possible.
Leaving your credit cards at home. This is good practice, and this is nothing new. We all hear, don't lean into credit cards if you can't pay them off in full. So if, a lot of people do pay them off in full and then you get the rewards, which may even be the travel points that you're using to fly. But if you are not in that situation where you aren't, maybe you struggle with paying off your credit card in full every month, just don't even take it. Use cash, use a debit card, and then you won't have any holiday hangover come January.
We talk a lot in my family on kind of the power of willpower. Willpower is hard. When you have the credit card right in your pocket, it's easy to just be able to pull it out. But if you don't have it with you, then it makes it far easier to say no and at least reflect on that purchase and make it the next day or the following day instead of just getting yourself into potentially that trouble of racking up credit card debt that you don't want to have to look at later on. Another thing that we've already touched on, but it's this idea of planning in advance what your income could look like. So even if you do decide to use the credit cards, do it thoughtfully, knowing that maybe you would get a bonus or a small dollar amount that you have already earmarked to pay off that credit card balance in full, so that again, you don't get stuck in that trap.
What is the true cost of credit? So if you are not able to resist the urge to use the credit card and you charge something, it's going to cost you more, right? Because you're paying interest. And so as we stand right now, the average credit card interest rate is around 19%. Now, this could be higher, or it could be a little bit lower, but generally credit card interest rates tend to run higher. We ran a hypothetical. What if you spent $1,000 on a credit card and you didn't pay it?
Yeah, for your holiday budget.
Yeah, for holidays, right? So we're not assuming it has a balance already existing. And so it would take you over 3 years to pay off this $1,000 credit card bill if you make the monthly payment only. Effectively, it would cost you 33% more. And I mean, think about it. If you're in this case in 2022, you wouldn't pay it off until sometime in 2020. What are we? That would be 2023, 2026. So unfortunately, those clothes probably won't be fitting. Those shoes may not be wearable anymore. So really think about how long and then how much this is going to take by charging it.
And the other thing, Lauren, is that this is assuming $1,000 spent in December of this year in preparation for these holidays. No additional spending is being added on to the credit card in this kind of very simple scenario. So when we say 3 years, if there's any additional expenses beyond your holiday budget, you're extending that time of paying off credit that much further. So it really does just highlight the power of leave the credit card at home, avoiding those impulse purchases, and thinking of other creative ways to enjoy the holiday season. So in that light, trying to think of other ways to share your joy and show love to those around you is being creative. So holiday gift exchanges, draw names. I come from a pretty big family and there are a lot of us, and we've already set the expectation you will not be getting a gift from everyone in our family. And we do a gift exchange where we put a name in a hat, and now we have the joy of being able to give something thoughtfully, but not the expectation that everyone will receive a wrapped package when it comes to the holiday season. And I must say, it's a huge relief and allows all of us to feel the love in a sustainable, but also really joyful way. Another option is consider only buying gifts for children, thinking through who has that expectation of a wrapped package and something that would bring them that joy that you're looking to give.
Some other creative ways that you could maybe cut costs on Christmas or the holidays, making something or sharing experiences with someone. It's an cliche almost. It's the thought that counts, but it really is. It really is. People want to know that you thought of them and that you put, maybe effort into something. So, sometimes as nice as it is to get gift cards, I'm sure we've all been in that place where it's like, well, I like it, but it misses the mark. We want to know that they put time and thought into something. So what are some ways to do that? One thing that I have actually done is if you have any young children, I have a 7-year-old son, and I kind of can't keep up with the amount of drawings and pictures that he comes home with. This makes great wrapping paper and grandparents love it, and it's special, right? So that's one thing that's kind of always gone over well, and gift wrap is expensive anyway, and it takes a little bit extra time, but getting my son involved in that action of like wrapping the gifts kind of is exciting for him too. Another thing that we have done is ceramics. So he likes painting. We go and do something, we have fun, and then it serves a purpose. So the ceramics go to grandparents, and he gets to have the joy of picking something that he thinks they might like. Pinterest will give you ideas for days. So I'm sure most everybody on this call is familiar with Pinterest. And another idea, in lieu of gifts, do something together. Share an experience. Theme park, perhaps that's not in the budget, but that's a lot of fun when you go with other people. Maybe it's a museum. Perhaps it's something as simple as lunch and a movie, or going over and deliberately cooking a nice dinner for this person, for the recipient, and cleaning up afterward. Maybe I've done this before. My grandmother, is volunteers her time quite a lot. So that was one thing I thought that would be meaningful for her. So I volunteered to participate in that activity with her one afternoon, and she actually really enjoyed it. And I touched on this earlier with the travel. Again, sometimes you're enough. So, you traveling to someone for the holidays, maybe don't buy anything, maybe do something, or don't even feel the need because you have, gone through the effort to travel to see them, and the expense as well.
Lauren, to echo that sentiment, I think all of us going through this kind of pandemic experience and everything else, I think everyone is really geared towards experiences instead of just things. And so I think remembering that as we head into this holiday season. One other idea that my family growing up has done, and I'm doing now with my own, is creating a coupon book. And so in that coupon book, it's just pieces of paper that you staple together. And my mom was wonderful. I don't know if we ever really cashed them in, but it was like a day off school, and you could rip off the coupon. or I will do the dishes when it's your turn to do the dishes. But just simple, loving acts of kindness to show someone else that you care about them that doesn't require a wrapped good. Then
That could also be great for spouses, kind of a coupon book, like, taking care of the kids, a massage, something nice.
yeah, things that show the other person that they're cared for, but doesn't require an actual monetary expense. Because I do think there's a lot of different ways to be creative. And
Absolutely.
then beware of gift cards. So gift cards are a wonderful tool if we do decide to go the route of giving someone more of a financial gift. But the trick with gift cards is making sure that you know and trust the source that you're purchasing them from, because some of them do end up being scams, and then you're just out the money, and the person who you've gifted is frustrated because they didn't even get to enjoy your intent. Um, Keep the receipt from gift cards sometimes at checkout. It's no malicious intent, but they don't get activated, and now they're not worth anything again to the recipient. Expiration dates on gift cards are also a big deal. You want to make sure that someone who receives one knows that they have a limited time to be able to use them. And then this big one being that treat them like cash. I think sometimes they can get stored and kind of just tucked away and forgotten about, but they do have real monetary value. And then one other element of gift cards as the recipient, the hard part there, and this is almost like full circle to the credit card on getting a $15 gift card is great if you go to the store and you spend $14.98. But that doesn't always happen. And so now, in order to enjoy that gift, I find myself actually spending $30 instead of the 15. And so I've put myself in a situation where I'm grateful for a gift, but now I have credit card debt, or I have to think of other ways to make up that difference. So again, it goes to the beginning of just kind of putting together a plan and being thoughtful of the gift that you want to try and give that sets yourself up for success, but also sets the recipient up to experience the joy that I know that that's the intent behind the gift that's being given.
Key takeaways. Making a plan for your holiday expenses, prioritizing, what the must-haves, starting earlier. The earlier, the better, right? So 67 days as of today, but come January, you have 365 days. Well, no, come Christmas, you have 365 days. So, you can always start in just pacing yourself. All of this to ensure there is no holiday hangover, and that you can enjoy the season for the right reasons. Being with your loved ones, the sentimentalness. It's a lovely time of the year.
I think the other thing to remember, it's the expectations. This time of year can really start to feel overwhelming when you think there's all these different people that have expectations of what you're going to be bringing or providing, or the number of gifts being given. So it's also about making sure when you put together this kind of spending plan for your holiday expenses, remembering to put yourself in the center of it, that those expectations are someone else's, and what's your own expectation. So it's more about giving yourself permission to know that, like Lauren's highlighted, traveling and your presence, that's enough. And I think that can sometimes get forgotten pretty easily in today's day and age, when we're all kind of seen in a consumer society, but remembering that just time together is precious, and putting that at the center and highlighting it and finding different creative ways to highlight it and incorporating it into the budget appropriately. I think that's kind of the bulk of what we had to share as we thought through what are the key things to think about headed into holiday season. I think at this point we'd welcome any questions people have on kind of how to navigate, and maybe Lauren's highlighted a few, but we'd love to hear from others on tips and tricks you guys implement that could be really beneficial for the rest of the community to benefit from.
So actually, I was thinking, talking about the going back to the planning piece. Do I need to know how to use Excel to make a spreadsheet? How is your what is your advice on actually sitting down and making this plan? Casey, you have any ideas?
Sure. So it really depends on how tech savvy you are, right? I love me a spreadsheet, but that does not mean that you need to use a spreadsheet as well. It really could be a simple pen and paper list. Like I have my notepad here. I take notes all the time. So start thinking of, and especially if you start early, start thinking of the names that you'd like to gift to people. Put your numbers next to it, right? And if you realize that you're over budget, start crossing off names, and that's totally okay too, right? I think it's the expectation that we've both set for ourselves and others have set for us. And as Julie just said, like we have to make sure that we're at the center of that so that the holidays does not derail our budget. Pen and paper is just as handy to create as an Excel spreadsheet. Just remember where you put your pen and paper.
That's always the question in my house, but yes, thank you for that. You don't have to be tech savvy to work on this, and Wahida, I'll put you on the spot here. So we're talking about having this budget during the holiday season, but can you just kind of stress the importance of having a budget, just having a budget for regular times, and how do we incorporate the holiday budget into our regular budget?
Yeah, of course. So it might be surprising to hear, but I hate a budget, man. I'm not trying to budget. Like I do not like it. Like some people like that spreadsheet. And to a point I do if I'm like trying to like plan like fun things, but I'm not trying to get into like what I'm spending on every single month, right? Like down to the dollar. Like, oh my gosh, that just drains me. So one thing that really works for me and some of my clients, some people really like going dollar by dollar, but what I've seen works for me and a lot of people I work with is just you have to put the time in the beginning, right? Like figure out what are our expenses, what are we wanting to spend on, what are we wanting to save for, and then put that dollar amount there, right? And then figure out like how much per paycheck do I need to put away to like meet that goal. So for example, maybe it's this Christmas, like maybe it's Christmas in 2 months. Maybe I need an extra $500 to save by Christmas. So maybe that means it's putting away an extra $100 or whatnot per paycheck, right? So in the beginning, we got to put a little bit of work in, right? So we got to put a little bit of work and figure out what's our numbers. And then we can automate that actually. So when that paycheck hits our checking account, we can say like, oh, I know I actually need to put away money for like birthdays and travel, and maybe you're saving for a car. You say, I know I'm putting money away for this. So automatically pull that money from your checking account and put it towards that savings account, right? So because now for me, I found that now all I really need to think about is how much am I spending going out? Like how much am I spending when I'm going out for drinks? Because that's really all I have to worry about, because everything else is accounted for. I don't care if I spend my checking account to zero, because everything else is accounted for, right? My bills are paid, my savings accounts are being funded. I'm just now what I spend is just like going out with friends. Like that's all I really do. But I cut out other places as well. So a budget doesn't need to feel restrictive. Like once you have things automated in a way that works for you, now all you're having to worry about like is where do I get to spend my fun money. And so don't feel like a budget is restricting or like it's like hard to like keep up month per month, because once you put in that work in the beginning, there are ways where you can just cruise. You're just like, well, I know every month I've got a few $100s I can spend on whatever I want, guilt-free. No one can say no to me, or I can't say no to me. And we move forward.
And that planning, just planning for anything is just really important. And Casey, the comment in the chat that you just responded to was spot on. Could you talk about that?
Sure. So a question was raised that there's so much debt already that you can't afford to make the budget, right? That to add the budget in for the holidays. And sometimes it's really showing up honestly and saying, you know what? Unfortunately, I can't afford to do X, Y, Z instead of putting ourselves in more debt. And I think as Julie and Lauren showed in their chart, if you add another $1,000, it's going to take you 3 years to pay off if you're only paying the minimum. And it's even worse if you add, this is if you don't add another dollar to it. So imagine if you're spending $1,000 plus the next month you're going out and spending another $1,000 because things happened and life happened. Now all of a sudden you have more debt than you can afford to pay off. And so it's okay to say, you know what, family, guess what? We're going to cook at home today and we're going to do this and make it fun, right? Not that people feel deprived of not being able to get something. And I do that with my daughter all the time. I'm like, so you're going to get an experience, or we just do things in a very different way that does not necessarily cost a dollar amount. And my daughter at 10 knows that, okay, we can't buy everything, right? Money's not unlimited, so we can't buy everything, but we can buy the things that are of importance. Or we have the money to spend on what we want to do or need to do without feeling that we're drowning in debt.
I want to add something really quickly since you said that quite well. I found that when I'm more open. I'm like, oh, I want to like stay within this budget, or if there's something I don't want to spend too much money on, I let my family know. I'm like, I don't want to spend more than this, or this event I want to be more like bougie on a budget, please. And I find that the more I am open about being saving for a certain thing than not wanting to go over monetarily on other things, it's a relief for everyone else. They're like, oh, you want to like save too? I'm like, yes, let's do it. And so like, you're not the only one thinking like, oh, I can't really afford spending so much money on this. Like everyone is thinking that. So like, if you voice it, it puts a relief on the crowd. So like, don't feel like you're the only one.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this doesn't just apply to the holidays. This applies to everything. Just to quickly share a personal story, my husband and I, the last anniversary we celebrated, my elderly mom was actually staying with us, so we didn't want to go to a restaurant. We wanted to enjoy it with the kids and my mom. So, you know, I bought what we had steak, which, you know, a nice cut of steak is extremely expensive if you're in a restaurant. So when I went to the grocery store and looked at what I spent on making that meal at home and the memories that I had with my mom being there, my husband grilling the steaks, my kids at home, versus what I would have paid at a restaurant, because coincidentally, my friends and I did go out to a restaurant not long after that, and seeing the price of the same cut of steak that I had was about $50 for one person. And my grocery bill was, you know, a lot less per person for that. So, and now I also have those memories. So keeping in mind that memories are precious too, and providing those experiences and providing those memories, especially in these times when groceries have skyrocketed in price, you know, it kind of makes it even more precious that you're able to do that. So that's great. Anybody else want to come on camera and ask their questions, or unmute yourselves and ask your questions?
So I also want to add something while we're waiting for others to come on. It's like, we should have started this. Raise your hands how many times you've gotten a gift that you actually don't want, right? So the person is trying to give us this thing, right? So it's costing them money. And now we end up with something else in our homes that we're like, but I'm trying to declutter. So sometimes like less is more. And especially if, you know, just like, you know what, let's do something else. Let's create this experience. Let's do whatever else. And it doesn't need to cost you $1, right? So I think it's just being creative about the ways that we're doing things, and not just setting the expectation that it has to cost us something.
That's true. So how about, can someone share a creative way that they were able to budget in an activity or something that you did with your family? Have any brave people that want to share? Well, we've had Miss Kathy on camera this whole time, so she's the brave one. Do you want to share any of your ideas with us?
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
So thank you again for the invite. I see these emails all the time and, I'm really in the office. So I said, let me click on today and I'm glad I did. Sometimes homemade baked goods, put it in a nice pretty tin. I mean, to some people, they probably think like, oh, you're being cheap, but it comes from the heart. You took the time to make it. So, and I do sometimes bake a lot.
Awesome.
And
Yeah.
Kathy, I actually would chime in on the being cheap. I think that's other people's expectations, but it takes more time and effort to bake a homemade good than it does to go and buy something at Starbucks. So again, giving yourself kind of that credit and permission to get
And a lot cheaper.
Yeah, well, but that's where I think realizing that yes, you're doing something that's financially healthy for you, but it's also aligned to you're showing care by cooking that good. That takes extra effort. And I think for me, that's the big one, is giving ourselves more permission in today's more consumer driven culture to remember that those homemade items and the things that come from creative kind of budget spending plan solutions are really, really valuable. But it's more about the permission that we give ourselves.
Yeah, thank you.
Kathy, I just want to quickly add, right? I do a presentation called What's in Your Hand, and it's using your gifts and talent to create additional income, right? So you said you love to bake. How can you use that to either create something? And I see my friend Vanessa on, and she makes candles, and I've had her candle for probably decades because we've been friends a lot. So it's really what's in your hand and using those gifts and resources that you have to create either additional income or to create those gift baskets for your friend during the holidays that it won't cost you as much. It'll cost you time, but it won't cost you as much for your dollars. And as I said, no is a complete sentence. Remember that, please.
Yeah, I laugh when I see that. That's so cute. Thank you.
You're welcome. Vanessa, you had a question?
I did not. I'm still trying to do Zoom through my phone, so forgive me, ladies, for like trying to figure this out. I am not too sure how this works. So okay, but yeah, Casey and I have been friends for since college, since accounting 101, and then she just went off on accounting 202, and I went somewhere else. But other than that, yes, it's definitely supporting. Where it comes to adults, it's interesting. Like, yeah, we've grown up for many years now. The teenagers or now have jobs of their own. They don't have needs and stuff like that. But there's 20, 30 of us pre-COVID. It was different now. Maybe next year will be different. But if you're on a budget and there's like 40 of us together, of course, bringing a dish, I prefer liquor. The bottle is cheaper for me anyways. A bottle of plum wine is like $12. And then we can try to do a game or something like that. And then whoever gets the bottle, that's it. And it doesn't cost me a thing. We can be creative and, no one feels less slighted. There's some kind of experience going on. But yeah, you're right. It's like, if you're already in debt, it doesn't make sense to go into debt even further or whatever. But no, yeah, it makes sense. Children, little babies, a toy here and there. I get it. But yeah, extravagance it has a cost. Absolutely.
And I think that is perfectly said to start thinking about priorities. But children, yes, a toy for them is inexpensive. You can get an inexpensive toy, and you're giving them a gift, and that's setting the priority for, or even what Julie was saying with the expectations of who's going to get gifts this year and why are they getting gifts. It's that whole mindset of let's prioritize it. I know that maybe a 6-year-old a toy is the best thing, but maybe your sister just wants to spend time with you, just wants to sit down and have a cup of coffee. So in terms of thinking about the relativity of the gift to the person.
I think also to piggyback on that, Wahida kind of highlighted the explaining on more of the budget and being honest about, I don't have that. Helping teenagers, younger generation recognize that there's trade-offs in life. That I'm not able to give you a gift this year because I have these other things. It doesn't mean I love you any less, but it's giving them even this model of permission and the ability to say, okay, I don't have to have an expectation to always show up with a gift. My love language can be something else. And even if it is love language as a gift, I mean, Lauren highlighted you could use the wrapping paper, the drawings as a wrapping paper, or the drawings themselves are the gift. You know, just I think it's powerful education for the next generation and just everyone to give that permission of, I can't afford it and it's okay. It doesn't mean that I love you any less, but there are trade-offs and that's life. Life is a set of trade-offs. Whether you have $100 or $100,000, there's still going to be things that are trade-offs that have to be made. And I think that's an important conversation.
Exactly.
I think that's
Agree.
exactly it. Lauren, did you have something to say? Were you gonna?
I was actually going to make a suggestion that I've done for cleaning services. So go ahead.
So in terms of like the chart that we had before, Julie and Lauren, where we showed the spending over, I think over time, some years you'll have more money and some years you'll have less. I remember a few years ago when I was still working in corporate, one of the things that I gave my daughter was a gift of, actually 2 gifts of experiences. So she wanted to go to the American Girl doll. I think she might have been like 6 or 7. And I printed out a picture of her, picture for her of the doll, choosing the cheaper one, by the way, and said, you can have this doll and we'll go to the store and pick it out, right? And I gave her another very pricey gift, but that year was gifts of experience. And now our budget looks differently. And I'm like, so I don't get you a gift, but we get to do X, Y, Z. And because she's been hearing this consistently over many years, she understands, right? So I think it's, again, setting the expectation, being open and honest with where we are financially, and that we can't do everything all the time because life changes. We're almost in a recession, depending on who you're talking to. Finances will look differently. The markets are down 20 to 25%, depending on where you are. So that means there's likely less money in different places. And it's okay to make adjustments in years that don't look as well in other years so that we're able to keep enjoying.
Wonderful. Well, I want to thank you all for being here and learning with us. We're always learning, and these are great opportunities. I want to thank all of our Savvy Ladies speakers, and all of our Savvy Ladies speakers today are amazing volunteers on our helpline, here to answer your questions as well. So I did put the helpline in the chat, and be smart about your finances, be smart and keep learning. We're all about education here. It doesn't matter where you are on your financial journey, we are here to help you. Also, just want to give a shout out to our next webinar coming up is the true cost of owning a pet. So kind of looking into that and how much does it really cost if you're thinking about that Christmas puppy or that Easter rabbit. We're going to look at that. So hopefully you can join us. With that said, I'll say goodbye. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.